The journey of life. A road ingrained with the footprints, hoof marks and flipper stains of every living creature on the planet. But how different are the journeys of mice and men, of wasp and crab? Once we're born, the race is on to find a mate and earn ourselves a little genetic immortality before it's all over. Each and every species on our planet has evolved a different way of travelling life's road. But the goal is always the same. And the crucial part is finding a mate. They say your wedding day should be the happiest day of your life, and in every culture and every continent, our species has a ceremony to celebrate the wondrous event. But are these two people marrying for love? Well, let's hope so. Whatever the reason, they're also marrying to breed.
It's a sign of our marriage.
Making babies is what marriage is all about. And not just in our society, or even our species. Marriage happens just as much in the natural world. Of course, animals don't bother with rings, dresses and fondue sets, but some of their ceremonies are just as elaborate and as curious as ours. Some marry for life, others just get it on and get out of it. There's a million different ways of finding Mr. or Mrs. Right, and most of them look like fun. It starts with a kiss. A tender, beautiful, loving kiss. And then it all gets a bit rude. But is the rudeness really necessary? Well, yes, it is if we want to reproduce. We all do what we have to do to ensure our genes make it into the next generation, even if that means commitment and marriage. The play between the sexes is eternal, and immortality is the prize. In order to have at least a chance of getting married, the male must first find someone to marry. The female, too, is preparing to mate. The male is in his den, puffing up his ego and preparing to display. Down on the mating ground, the competition is fierce. Special potions, which make the mating process less stressful, are quaffed liberally. As soon as the lubrication begins to take effect, males and females take part in the ritual dance of attraction. Finally, it's all too much for the male. He makes his move. First, he must make sure she's female. And he seems to have got that one right. Now he must fool her into thinking that he's the one. Animals have their own version of Saturday night fever. They dance, they display, but they can manage it without the aid of 5 pints of lager. Take the booby, for example. When it comes to breeding, the male booby has his work cut out. There are several species, and the male could easily make a serious booby by trying to mate with the wrong one. The secret is in the feet. This dance is his only hope of finding a female with the right coloured footwear. Having done so, he must impress her with his DIY skills. Could do with a bit of MDF and some throw cushions, but at least she knows he'll be handy about the nest. But when it comes to putting up metaphorical shelves, the bowerbird is the king of the hill. He constructs a complicated bower out of reed and spends days making it look pretty with soft furnishings. The best bower gets the best bird. Strangely, bowerbirds don't live in these nests or even rent them out. Pulling the chicks is the only use their building skills are put to. All that work just to get your wing over. Some males don't bother with domestic pleasantries. They're out to stun the females with sheer glamour. Hummingbirds are small but agile and put on an impressive flying display. The dazzled female looks on impressed. Encouraged, the male becomes ever more daredevil, with sometimes disastrous consequences. Male birds are the glamour boys of the animal world. They show off their brilliant plumage, fancy footwork and advanced homemaking skills. Egged on by the females, fashion statements get quickly out of control. Extreme tails get longer and sweepier. Haircuts get wilder. And pouches get blobbier. Competition on the catwalk is fierce. There's no way you're going to stand out from the crowd unless you're wearing the latest designs. Glamour is everything. You can never be too shiny, too garish, or too beaky. It's all part of the wonderful world of animal marriage. The grebe walks on water to impress his female. And the Sarus crane performs a long dance of tortured love. These cranes dance at any time of year, leaping into the air and extending their wings. But their moves become more elaborate and intensify as a prelude to mating. It seems to work too, as Sarus cranes mate for life and are regarded as a symbol of marital bliss in the Far East. Most women like to shop, and in the world of deer, females have it down to a fine art. Cob females even shop for males. The males all group together in small areas called leks. Here they try their hardest to impress the females. They've been practicing for months, and now's their chance to really strut their stuff. The females browse for a while, looking for that special big value pack. The males make such an effort to impress because the prize is great. The glitziest, showiest males get almost all of the action. sage grouse stage an intense contest of strength and beauty. In a highly ritualised display, the male rears back quickly, drawing his wings across his stiff feathers, producing a swishing sound, and makes a couple of extraordinary loud liquid plops that are amplified through his large yellow air sacs. This noisy display can be heard as much as 5 kilometres away. All this swishing and plopping drives the females mad with desire. But only one male in 100 reaches master cock status, and he'll mate with 500 frenzied female fans, 100 per night. And if he wilts, there's always another cock on hand. So why is Glitz important to females? Well, which ram would you find most attractive? If you were another sheep, of course. Glitz is a sign of health. But an outrageously dressed animal singing and dancing about is as likely to get his head bitten off by a predator as he is to get a quick wriggle. He's also going to waste a lot of time. So in order to succeed despite these ludicrous risks, he must be altogether exceptional. And that's exactly what the females want: good genes. Females only want healthy males to father their young, and so encourage the males to become ever more outrageous. Of course, many animals don't have shiny feathers and a natural sense of rhythm with which to impress the ladies. For these animals, size matters. Hippos have a yawning competition. The biggest mouth usually wins, but the one with the worst halitosis has a good shot too. The yawning can go on for hours and hours, causing both competitors to get more and more bored. This, of course, makes them yawn even more. Eventually, one will fall asleep, and the other will claim the bride. For frogs, it's the biggest throat pouch that'll win the ladies' hearts. Grant's gazelles try to make themselves attractive by wearing flowers in their horns. This one won't turn any heads at Royal Ascot, but female gazelles are fortunately easier to impress. If you're not good-looking or big, don't worry. There's another way to score: mail order brides. Or sometimes showing a girl a good time can be enough to secure her affections. But if the theme park date doesn't work, you may end up having to act tough. In the human jungle, even hanging on to a mate can be a problem. Just watch what happens when this alpha male's back's turned. Perhaps this female will be easy to lure away from the older bloke. But oh no, the alpha male must assert his dominance to keep his female. The younger male retreats to avoid the possibility of physical conflict. The last thing he needs is a Mr. Whippy shoved down his throat. Grant's gazelles have a similar strategy. They perform a ritual of parallel walks to size each other up. If they look evenly matched, they knock horns to threaten their rivals. The Ploughshare Tortoise is a confused species. The males compete for females by trying to turn each other over with their ploughs. In their minds, the winner gets the girl and the happy couple plod laboriously into the sunset. But in reality, they're both losers. The females can't stand violence and leave them both lonely, exhausted, and eventually upside down. The upturning competition goes on for hours and hours. Strangely, the Ploughshare Tortoise isn't extinct. Yet. The Desert Tortoise, however, makes for all the more entertaining viewing. They are the tortoise equivalent of the WWF series. The loser concedes by shaking his foot in frustration. Sex is such a serious business. If the threats don't work, the girls like a hard man. And if the opponents are closely matched, the only choice left is a scrap. Males are adorned with all manner of sharp, pointy things and impressive blubber with which to knock each other senseless. Only the fittest will survive. Fighting's a dirty, dangerous business, and it just goes to show how desperate these guys are to get a gal. A day at the seaside's no picnic for elephant-nosed seals. Female elephant-nosed seals have to give birth on dry land, so once a year they make for the beach. Here they raise their young until they're old enough to look after themselves. The boys were already ashore spreading out their towels before the females had even arrived. Actually, they're doing what all ugly men do. They're fighting for females. If you're an elephant seal, sex can be a miserable business. You have to be at least 10 years old and bear at least 3 tons of quivering flesh to get your flipper over. Only 1 in 10 males will ever get the chance to mate. No wonder they look depressed. Life is definitely not a beach for the male elephant seal. In fact, trying to find a mate is a continual source of stress for most animals, so why bother at all? All the whiptail lizards in the world are female. They've disposed of males altogether. Males are more trouble than they're worth. They're nice as pie until they've had their oats, and then they're off, leaving the females to raise the young. Whiptails cut their losses and just clone themselves. So why does any female need a male? The clue lies with aphids. Ever wondered why one day there's no green fly and the next there's thousands of the little green suckers? During the summer, all aphids are females. Every 20 minutes, each aphid can produce a tiny replica of herself. this is a virgin birth. During the autumn, however, this system grinds to a halt and far fewer babies are produced. Aphids turn to sex, and every now and then a male is born. But why? Autumn is an unpredictable season. Food is far more scarce, and the weather turns towards winter. When conditions become unpredictable, sexual reproduction becomes an advantage. Sex means variable offspring, rather than just identical copies of mum. Some will survive better than others. Some may be suited to a mild autumn, others to the cold. In any case, some will survive. Mixed genes give a better hand in the lottery of life. OK, that may be fine for aphids, but they haven't got the miracles of medicine, supermarkets and central heating. Whatever you may think of your parents or offspring, sex is vital for larger and more complex animals like us to evolve. But whatever the reasons for sex, the quest for it is always the same. How do you attract a partner? And where do you go on a Saturday night? The problem with sex is always the same. Males want one thing, sex, and females want something else altogether, usually shoes. Why do the sexes seem to live on different planets?
And I've been vaccinated for ills anticipated, but now I'm acting crazy as a loon.
Men produce 12 million sperm every day. They can impregnate 40 women in one night. Women are born with about 300 eggs. And because it takes them 9 months to carry the baby and up to 20 years to look after it, they have to be much pickier than the men who they breed with. So when it comes to sex, men and women do it for different reasons. She wants the best of all possible fathers for her offspring. A nice motor is the human equivalent of a long, flashy tail, a symbol of power. This man might make a good father. Sadly, he's not the alpha male she first thought. He's just some bloke leaning on the real alpha male's car, and as always, looking for a mate. Today, he's out of luck. There's a subtle difference between marriage and monogamy. Most males and females only exchange telephone numbers with each other when they're breeding, and this is restricted to the few times of year when the female is in season. But during this time, they're totally dedicated to each other. Even popping out for groceries at all hours of the day. When we watch images like these, we tend to assume that there's something more than just sex going on, a real affection between males and females. Perhaps there is. The only difference between marriage and monogamy is the length of the relationship, which can last from a mere moment to a whole lifetime. Kingfishers are usually seasonally monogamous. Pair bonds are formed after the male establishes his territory. Secretary birds, though, pair for life. Each year, they return to the same nest, repairing and expanding it with the addition of more sticks or grass. Nests of up to 2 metres in width aren't uncommon. Animals just know when it's the right time to breed. They can sense it and smell it. Love is all around them. But in humans, there's a subtle difference. Men are always looking for young, healthy females to mother their young. They're always ready to breed. But unlike most other animals, men can't tell whether women are ovulating or not. This means that men can never be sure that a mating will result in a pregnancy. He'll have to brave it out for a few months if he wants to make sure that should the female become pregnant, he is the father. The longer he stays, the surer he is. Once you've selected your lovely lady and things are looking quite promising, it's time to attempt to mate. But how's a young male to know whether she's ready or not? Smell is a useful indicator of sexual state. Many males find that a bit of perfume often loosens the female up. Females too attract males by smell. These chemical attractants are called pheromones and act as an aphrodisiac to a sometimes reluctant female. The mountain dusty salamander also uses some low tactics to turn the female on. Special glands under his chin contain an aphrodisiac. He must draw blood to infect her, so he bites her on the neck. Once bitten, she's under his spell and will follow him wherever he goes. And that's not the only unpleasant surprise. Her unexpected new beau doesn't even have a penis. He just dumps his sperm on the ground and then leads her over it. When she's above it, her genital opening draws it in. Humans also give off pheromones. The nose is a shortcut to the most instinctual parts of the brain, and the male instinctively knows that smelling nice will help him achieve his goal. Females too have been known to give nature a helping hand. When a male becomes aroused, he begins to sweat. He secretes a chemical under his armpits, which the bacteria that live there convert to pheromones. Some females like a more basic smell. When the male guinea pig wants to mate, he sniffs the female's genitals. She generally rebuffs him and keeps doing so until he's finally had enough and decides to pass water on her. Strangely, this seems to be the key to her heart, and he finally gets to have his way with his beautiful, urine-sodden sweetheart. It's hard to sexually arouse a snail. Believe me, I've tried. They're hermaphrodites and could, in theory, have sex with themselves. However, they usually don't for fear of going blind. So instead, they've devised a pretty direct method of letting others know that they're up for it. When two snails meet, they fire an arrow of love into each other called a Cupid's dart. These chitinous darts pierce their body walls and usher in a night of slimy love action.
I feel your breath upon my face.
An alternative to perfume, aphrodisiacs and darts of snail juice is simply to give the lovely lady a gift. It's called bribery. Simple.
And I need you, girl. So, nothing ventured, nothing gained.
female will eventually get the idea.
and love. I'm saving it all, the best for you. I'll give you anything you want me to. With nothing to
This spider is wrapping a gift of food in a silken parcel for the female he hopes to woo.
always be here waiting by your side.
This eagle tries a gift of snake,
There's no way back,
and this tern a gift of fish.
no way out. So read between the lines, there is
This
no
cockatoo is regurgitating a romantic meal for two.
Gotta keep doing it. Gotta keep pushing.
This roadrunner has missed the point entirely, and he's hanging on to his gift. Well, it's working like a carrot on a stick, and he can use it again later. Bargain. Sometimes all it takes is a bit of tender, loving care. Octopus females are notoriously nervous and won't consider sex unless they're calmed and then highly aroused. Fortunately, the male has 8 arms with which to tickle her fancy. He massages her until she shows vivid colour changes. But unbeknownst to her, one of the male's arms is actually his penis, which he slips into her when she's not looking. The human male has one extra string to his bow: love, which means commitment to the female. He demonstrates his undying love with romantic gestures and the pretense that he has an opinion about her new dress. Only this will ensure the female's willing cooperation in this rather distasteful set of affairs. To animals, there's nothing embarrassing or funny about sex. It's just something that has to be done. They don't enjoy it at all. Honest. Sometimes it's all over in a couple of seconds. Sometimes it's more complicated, like for the elephant who has a penis with a mind of its own. It's a serious business, and to celebrate, we've compiled a list of the 5 greatest animal sex feats. Number 1, most times in succession. Flies beat their wings 500 times per second. They also have a hectic sex schedule, copulating in midair up to 100 times in a row. Number 2, most times in a day. Lions mate on the hour every hour for the 2 to 3 days that the female is in season. That's 72 times in 3 days. Number 3, most pregnant females in one night. Female Phascogalis all come into season together. The male bounds around doing it with every lady he meets. He impregnates 12 females per night and about 60 in total, then probably dies of exhaustion before he can brag to his mates. Number 4, biggest penis. If a barnacle was the same size as a man, his penis would be the size of Nelson's column. Barnacles can't move, so their penises do. And finally, number 5, most flamboyant penis. Cockroaches have 7 penises varying in shape and size. They mate well into the night using their Swiss Army tools to delight the female. Safe sex takes on an altogether different meaning for many animals. The male tarantula must creep up to the female to avoid startling her. The tarantula female has poison fangs, and she really doesn't like males. He must try to hold her fangs out of the way. And then he must reach forward with his sperm-laden palps to her genital paw, which is right under her belly. Hardly the most relaxing of nights in. She still manages to bite him, though, before he has the chance to run off. Spiders are prepared for dangerous sex, but the male scorpion is made to look a right mug. It all seems to be going so well. The lovers stand on their heads, entwine tails, embrace, and dance long into the night. They finally retire to a hole to make passionate love. By morning, the female has killed and eaten him. Rough date. At the other extreme, some animals can't get enough sex. The usually priggish Calicebus monkeys celebrate the mating season with a free-for-all. Usually, these monkeys do their best to avoid one another, but once a year, all the females come into season and the population's thrown into a sexual frenzy. But as soon as the mating season's over, it's back to a lonely, chaste existence. Garter snakes spend all winter holed up in hibernation. Once spring breaks, it's a free-for-all. The female exudes a scent which attracts the males to her. Up to 100 at a time roll around in a frenzied, writhing, snaky mating ball. Snails, too, can be surprisingly saucy. Being both sexes, mud snails line up and all mate with the snail in front of them in a slimy sex conga. Not a party trick to show your grandmother. In fact, snails have managed to save a lot of bickering by being both male and female at the same time. The hamlet fish also manages to keep out of trouble with the clever use of transsexuality. Other animals gender bend simply when the time's most convenient. Blue-headed wrasse are all born female. Only the biggest females turn into males, and they keep the rest in a huge fishy harem. When the biggest male dies, the next biggest female is promoted. So blue-headed wrasse have the best of both worlds. As young females, they regularly spawn, and as males, they are prolific and sensitive lovers. Another way of beating the system is universal: infidelity. Here follows a twisted tale of deception and intrigue. The Mojave desert lizards have different coloured throats. The blue-throated lizard heroically defends a termite-infested territory for his female. But he's in constant danger of being cuckolded by the oversexed orange-throated lizard, who scurries between territories trying to seduce the female and bully the blue-throats who aren't as hard or aggressive. Then there's the yellow-throated lizard, an androgynous little sneak who looks like a female but is really a male. He gets his end away while the other two are fighting. Sneakiness can be a very successful male trait, and often the female isn't averse to it either. Humans too aren't averse to temptation. "25% of men admit to having had an extramarital affair, and 15% of children aren't fathered by their supposed biological father." Males can never be certain that they're the father of their partner's offspring. Coyote males are sure, though. They and other members of the dog family not only have a bone in their penis to maintain lengthy erections, but during mating, their penis swells up inside the female so that the male is unable to withdraw for sometimes up to an hour. This can be very distressing for the inexperienced couple. Once the male's scored, it's just possible he'll do the honourable thing. Not all males are such cads. Sometimes it's the female that does the runner. It's the male seahorse that gets pregnant, not the female. Once he's pregnant, you won't see her for plankton. The general rule, though, is that Dad skips town, unless the kids are going to need a lot of looking after. If they are, then monogamy is the answer. Probably the most famous monogamists are humans. One man, one woman. However, plenty of other animals favour this approach. Although only 3% of mammals are monogamous, 90% of birds are. One of the most dedicated relationships in the world is that of the hornbill. Hornbill couples are completely devoted to each other. When it's time for the young couple to start a nest, they search for a suitable hole in a tree. The male then helps wedge her in and covers the entrance to the hole with mud, leaving only a beak-sized gap. The female cares for her young in this hole, and the male brings food to his young family. They're trapped in the tree and are completely dependent upon the male, who's surprisingly reliable. When the chicks are old enough to look after themselves, he helps his wife to break out of her beak-infested prison. Monogamy helps to keep families together. Gibbon families all have their own territories. During the day, the male goes off to defend his patch, leaving the females and young to forage. The family keeps in constant contact by calling to each other throughout the day. Her song tells the male where she is so that he can return and check that they're okay. But among the most dedicated of couples is the Waved Albatross. The young pair first hook up as 5-year-olds at a seabird dance. After a whirlwind romance, they go their separate ways. But a year later, they're back, and this time, they're an item. They set up home and finally start a family. Such a dedicated degree of monogamy is needed because the chick takes a year to grow. During this time, the partners take turns to fly out to sea to gather food for the family. They're gone for weeks at a time, but always return. Among humans too, monogamy means more than sex. Marriage is about friendship, partnership, and matching cagoules. Anyway, they all lived happily ever after. Probably.